Alright, so sorry I didn't dress up. Apparently we're on the verge of World War III again. So yeah, it looks like there's been some other developments in the Israel situation. This topic is far too complex to cover in a video. I have tried. It's way too many details to cover, especially since this thing didn't really start on October the 7th. Now, I'm not on one side or the other, right? I was in Israel in 1986, hitchhiking around on my own, hitchhiking all over the place, getting buses, sleeping under the stars sometimes, and sleeping in small hotels and hostels. Wonderful, wonderful time. People from all religions and everybody just treated me so well, obviously. I don't know if that's white privilege, but it was a much freer country, much safer back then. You know, it probably wasn't totally safe for me to be hitchhiking from Jericho to the Sea of Galilee on my own through the middle of the night. Especially since that was the era when they were taking hostages over in I believe it was in Lebanon or Jordan. But I was hitchhiking through what's now called Palestine, basically, the West Bank. But it was fine. And I slept in a bus stop. Not a bus stop, a little bus shelter, tiny little one, by the side of the road one night. Carried on to the Sea of Galilee. And before that, I'd slept up on top of the Masada, if you know what that is. Watched the full moon come up over Jordan from the top of the Masada, which is looking out over the Dead Sea in the desert. Watched the full moon come up over Jordan and the sun come up over Jordan the next day. So, incredible memory. And, what else did I do? I was down in Bethlehem, watching outside the town there, watching the Bedouin come in from the desert on their camels. It's probably all jeeps these days, but so they're coming in to the market there, outdoor market. On the outskirts of town. So it's just an amazing experience. I could tell you a lot more. I slept inside the walls of Jerusalem. Inside the wall, there was a tiny hotel that was literally inside the wall, or it was maybe on an ancient part of the wall that was sticking out a bit, but inside the city walls. $6 a night, I believe it was. It was nice, simple, and clean. And then had a great time. All sorts of other things. So hitchhiking around there. Sleeping under the stars, one country, no fences, no walls in Jerusalem. I believe there's a wall in Jerusalem somewhere, walled off area or something. There's different fences in different places. There's a giant fence somewhere across the West Bank, fencing off the West Bank, I believe. There was none of that. And so I just went around, had a great time. It was a short visit, hitchhiking. I was living in Cyprus at the time. At Cyprus College of Art, went over there for a week by boat from Cyprus. I couldn't afford to leave the country because there was a $10 fee to get back on the boat, even if you had a return ticket. So, but the guy let me go. So many wonderful memories about that, and all the people. I just seemed like almost karmic the way I was meeting all these people from an old man, usually from a different religion. Coming up to me and just talking to me, and then talking to me about some of the issues going on between different sections or sects, religions. So I look at 1986 Israel, and I think Israel should go back to that. I'm sorry. I mean, I know Palestinians want their own place, and Gazans and all that, or they were sort of pushed into it, really. But that was a great time. There's a lot of freedom for everybody. And there wasn't the same tensions. There were tensions, but it was nothing like what it is now, or has been over the last 10, 15, 20 years, right? So I would support an Israel of 1986. I'd change the name, though. So I'd change the name because Israel is a sectarian name, and that's part of the problem. I wouldn't change it to Palestine either, by the way. I'd change it, you can go back in history and look at what was written on the various maps going back 2,000 years, and you can argue about that. You can go back to all sorts of things that are kind of curious. Apparently, Israel was mentioned on a Egyptian, Egyptian monument, and at least 2,000 years ago or more. And it says, according to the scholars, they say it's the pictures. They say these little pictures says Israel. It doesn't, because when you pronounce it out the way they want you to pronounce it out, it says Assyria, which is Assyria, which is what the Egyptians would have called it, ancient Assyria. So they mention that something on the stela, little pictograms, of course. So pictograms don't have any sound. We don't really know what they sounded like. So to call it Israel is a stretch, because even the transliteration is Assyria, right? So I don't know, maybe they might have some reason for that. There's a lot of scholars who disagree with the interpretation. So you can go back and argue where Israel is, where it comes from. It's a tribe of Israel, and is therefore sectarian. Although they're all Abrahamists. I shouldn't be laughing because this is tragic, right? But I can't take this seriously anymore. I mean, I do. I weep when I see those children being destroyed on both sides, or people in general, innocent civilians. Yeah. So I'm sure everybody's had something of that experience of feeling emotionally perturbed by it. I get a lot of that. I'm an artist. It's part of the curse of being an artist. You are emotional, as well as I'm also a science devotee since I was a kid, in ways that most people can't even begin to function in. So I have a master's degree in philosophy and philosophy of science. So I've got both sides going on. Just right now, I'm just thinking, looking at the situation, thinking generally. So forgive me if I'm having a bit of a laugh here and there. It's disgusting what's going on. We could have stopped it. Me, and people like me, we know how to prevent this. And people ignore it. So I won't talk about that here. It's all evidence-based. But we're here now. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, I was in Israel and now we're at this situation. To me, the 1986 Israel was a better Israel, except I would change the name. No fences, no borders, none of it. But change the name. Because Israel has got sectarian overtones, undertones, and sectarian meaning in that context, even though they're all Abrahamists, which they should just go back, in my opinion, have an agreement. It's never going to happen. I'm not naive, but in an ideal world, they'd all have an agreement that says, okay, let's change the name. We'll go back to the ancient phrase for peace country, or something like that. That would have been used by Abraham himself, or even before he came along, right? So in those ancient Semitic, and don't forget they're all Semites, right? Semite is just the wrong word for Jews. So ancient Semitic languages and Indo-European languages, and find the phrase for peace country that would have been used in Abraham's time and in his region. That's what I'd suggest. So give it the name of peace country from the Abrahamic times, if such a thing existed, if he existed, right? That would be idealistic. But yeah, that's the only way. Go back to I support the 1986 Israel, which is a one-state solution, I must tell you. So I'm not going to be popular, but I don't think it should be called Israel. And it certainly shouldn't be called a Jewish state, as it's often referred to by the mainstream media. It's mad. And then having this thing where Jews can come from all around the world to go there, live there, and work there is also mad. I know how much that still goes on, by the way, but yeah, I think it does. People from Africa coming up and being refused Jews. So it's just a bizarre world. Now we're getting into this situation. It seems to be escalating, and not much you can do at this point. You know, ceasefire, yeah, I called for that already. Negotiations, yeah, we've called for that for decades. I don't know, it's a lot of people are saying Israel gave up the last set of negotiations. But all that was needed was you all to recognise that you're all the same people. You're Semites, Abrahamists, I call them. That's the first step. And then have a democracy. Call it whatever you want. Call it democracy, country, whatever you want. Don't call it Israel. Don't call it, don't call it whatever other sects are going along around there, What are they? Oh, I can't remember the names of all the biblical sects and tribes, and, don't call it any of that. But just give it a name, an abstract name like Peace Country. But that'll never happen. So when people say, do you support Israel? I say, yes, I support the Israel of 1986 with a different name. Right, so it's going on now. The whole thing's unfolding. Not much you can do. I personally, we do have solutions, but it's a bit late at this point. And people are calling it World War III's coming up. I don't think that's going to happen. They said that with Ukraine. They keep saying that. There's a lot of paranoia going on. Nobody's going to start World War III. However, the situation there is horrendous. You had some pretty nasty stuff going on with the Hamas attack. A lot of that turned out to be sort of made up, basically. Just like in the past, you had made up propaganda, or just people make things up and it spreads like wildfire. Like in 1991, babies being thrown out of incubators in Kuwait by Iraqi soldiers. 40 babies thrown out of incubators. Found out to be a lie. All the rest of it. WMDs in Iraq, Russians raping women and children in Ukraine. That was a lie. There's always bad apples in every army, but the most likely rapes that were going on in Ukraine early on there were from mercenaries from abroad. So not Russian soldiers. So I just tend to not believe all this stuff. Hamas has a declaration of 2017 that says it's not against Jews or the Jewish faith. It's against what they call Zionists. So it's against what they think of as the people who run that country and the system. So it's systemic. It's a systemic problem. They think of it that way. And so they're not against Jews or Judaism. So, and then there's a lot of Jews living in Arabic countries quite safely. So that's important to remember, that they have stated that, and you can argue against it and say, well, they're lying. Okay, you can say anybody's lying if you just want to say that. But a lot of those stories coming out of the attack from Hamas on Israel a couple of weeks ago were lies, made up, spread everywhere, and or used as propaganda. So you can't really trust some of the most horrific stories that you hear. And I won't go over the details of that. It's far too, maybe it's too early. Maybe it's, there's a lot of details, but there's definitely nothing that's very verifiable at this point. What's verifiable is that things were made up, and other atrocities that have not been figured out yet do not have much weight to them. Taking hostages is a horrible thing. Yeah, so that's horrible, and maybe they're being treated okay, but they're being bombed by Israel at this point. So the point of taking the hostages was naive. They thought Israel would not destroy them if they have hostages. That's usually the point of taking hostages in a situation like that, right? But Israel seems to have decided to just bomb the bejeebers out of everything, hostages or not, and they've got their what they think is rationale for doing that, right? But it's all a bit late at this point. What would be the solution? I would say the solution would be something I can't even explain on this video. So ask me. I wish people would ask me questions about different things. And then I'd have something to say, like maybe about Israel. For example, I'm saying I've had 1,000 solutions over the last couple of 3 weeks based on this new event, right? So we had solutions in the past, like I say, 1986 Israel, and we could have changed the name. We should have changed the name. It's too sectarian. Anybody who thinks that Israel is not a sectarian name, it's too sectarian, is lying to themselves. So change the name, go get a nice, peaceful democracy, fair and free elections with all the troubles that does cause in general. Anyway, do your best and change the name. So we're looking at sort of the invasion of Gaza now by Israel, full scale it looks like. Yemen seems to have gotten involved, or they're claiming they got involved. Yemen firing missiles. I don't know how they do that from Yemen. I mean, from over you'd have to fire them over the whole of Saudi Arabia from Yemen, I think. be pretty hard to not, unless they have ships out in the Red Sea or something. Yemen? Ships? With missiles on them? I don't know. And there's supposed to be these rebels, not just the government. So who knows what's going on there. Escalating a little bit here. Definitely not going to be a good outcome no matter how you look at it. So solutions come from a different level that cannot be explained in a video like this. So I'm just talking about this because, you know, I'm seeing this escalation. And yeah, it's sad after having been there in a more hopeful time. Various political and global forces have manipulated Israel and the region to where it is now. Those global forces include certainly America and its military, which we have to question that as well, because there's oil and gas under Gaza and offshore Gaza, right? Gazans can't access it. They don't have the technology, the power. And if they tried to, they probably, if they got some corporation to come and build up in some oil rigs or something, they'd probably get blown up. They don't have the money or organization for that. And then the offshore gas wells, I think it's gas offshore, they can't even go there. The ports are blockaded by Israel. So, when you know that the US military, the biggest military on earth by far, ridiculous fossil fuel burning monstrosity around the world, the biggest single burner of fossil fuels of any single entity in the world. So you wonder if that whole system, I'm not saying there's some general going, haha, let's go get that gas, but that whole system might be building up through Israel and other places. With Israel as a sort of almost like a puppet in the whole system of resource allocation that's needed for the US military for the next 30 years. They have to look ahead 30 years. That's how dependent they are, because they think that the world needs them. They think America needs them, and therefore they think they have to make sure they've got enough fuel for the next 30 years. 30 years. So that's speculative, but other than that, Israel has definitely been embroiled, and so like in a web that filters out into the massive political, military, news media, industrial complex. So that whole complex, it's a system, it's systemic. So whatever problems are in a system, it's systemic. It's hard to break. And Israel's just like a pawn in all that. So, almost like a pawn. They think that it's all about preserving themselves and they're getting help from America. But it's not really. It's more like having a place in the Middle East, which can be a bit of a spur or a pain in the side a thorn in the side to the other countries where there's oil around there. Now you find out there's oil in Gaza. Woohoo! There you go. Israel is not an independent country. It's part of a massive, powerful system that makes its own power, military power, political power, and even influence, look like a joke compared to the power that it is embroiled with. So when you say, do you support Israel, you're asking me, do I support the Western hegemonic military, industrial, political, murdering, news media, you name it, complex, that whole complex that in my lifetime has been committing massive war crimes, in my opinion. I mean, Iraq was one. There were no WMDs, but you killed off 500,000 people and 1 million displaced, something like that. Afghanistan was your big disaster. Lost that war. Lost the Vietnam War. Lost massive money and blood. Lost in Afghanistan. Iraq War, you might say, that is sort of okay, except Syria's involved. It's all kind of involved there. There's no barrier, but there's no real barrier between what goes on in Syria and the dangers to Iraq. So I guess, maybe you'll say Iraq is Americanized or something. But certainly Libya, you lost that war. You killed Gaddafi, but the place went into chaos. You didn't solve anything, made things worse. And you've lost the Ukraine war because Russia was never trying to take over the whole Ukraine, topple the government and put everyone at gunpoint. That's not what they were doing. They were going for those eastern provinces where there was so much trouble going on right on their border, right? People were firing missiles at passenger planes, and then people will say, well, that was Russians. No, it wasn't. It might have been a Russian person who's got nothing to do with Russia, a group. But there were so many fascists and gangsters and all sorts of criminal elements in the eastern provinces and around the Black Sea that they thought they had to do something about it, and they did. And so they took those eastern provinces. They were never trying to topple the government of Ukraine, which is the great blunder or lie, but mostly a blunder of the Western world and everyone else to have thought they were trying to topple Ukraine. You lost that war. Russia won. They've got what they came for. End of. And they will hold it. That's the end of it. So, and you just ruined Zelensky and everybody, you know. He's sort of been forgotten. His only choice now is maybe to become a dictator or sidle up to Russia, or he'll get deposed and someone else will become a dictator and sidle up to Russia. So, well done, NATO, you clowns. US intelligence, all of you. Absolute clowns. So, yeah, do you support that whole complex that to me is a clown world with disastrous consequences, full of people with very poor thinking and analysis capabilities, very little experience in the world as well, by the way. I don't care if they went in the military, became a general, became part of a politician or part of a US administration. I don't care. They're still inexperienced people of the world and what the world really is. So do I support that whole system, which is all about, again, you could easily argue is all about making money through selling weapons and all sorts of other things like that, right? So the arguments are made. Some of that's definitely true. So do I support that system? Is that what you're asking me? Of which Israel is a tiny, tiny pawn in that game? Do I support that whole thing? No, I don't, because we have other solutions to all this. So I don't support Israel as it is, as a little cog in a wheel of a worldwide massive military and a Western or American political news, media news complex, right? And all those other little things you can add in there. Big Pharma is one of them, right? They've faded. So if you ask me, do I support Israel, you're literally asking me, do I support a massive entity that causes massive damage around the world in ways that I think are irrational, stupid, almost evil, you know, and borderline always putting us on the verge of World War III. Do I support them? No, I don't. I don't support Biden. I don't support Trump. I don't support any of them right now. None of them are any good. Tell me about someone who's any good, and I can tell you where there's massive holes, that are dangerous holes in their thinking. So, yeah, there were atrocities committed, so that's the first thing everyone jumps on you for. They weren't what you were told, and this thing has been going on for decades, and in fact, the whole thing's been going on my whole life. So do I support Israel? I support 1986 Israel, no borders, no fences, everybody in a real, but evolving to a proper democracy for everybody, and change the name. That's what I support. So you tell me that I don't support Israel if all I'm saying is change the name from what it should have been before in 1986. It should have been that culture and that society, democratic, and becoming more and more democratic and more integrated. Yeah, I support that Israel with a different name, peace country, in the ancient Semitic, Abrahamic languages. That's what I support, all right? So I don't support a military-industrial massive complex of which Israel is a tiny pawn, cog in that giant complex. And I don't support the Israel of today because it's not the Israel I knew, which was a much better Israel. and I would just change the name. All right. No doubt there'll be lots of people come up with different ways of talking about this. There's 1,000 solutions being given, like I say, to this problem going on right now. None of them are solutions. It's a joke right now. So come up with solutions. Tell me where I'm wrong. Ask me questions, because I would like to think more about it. If people ask me questions, maybe I can bring in some more interesting points that I may not have covered here, because this is the most complex topic, one of the most complex around right now. Is Israel, Palestine, the history of that region, etc. Right? Okay, bye for now.